Good evening. Welcome to the March 8th, 2022 meeting of the Newtown Township Trails and Greenways Committee. Just a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. Secretary Cook, can you please call the roll?
John Custer,
Here.
Anthony DiVincenzo,
Here.
Aaron Cook, present, Amy Blagriff,
Present.
Bethany Denisha, Delia Archer, Joe Falcon,
Present.
and Terry McCarthy.
Right.
Mark Carr,
Okay.
Okay. Also present are Township Manager Stephen Neese, Director George Sharretts. May we have a moment of silence? Please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item is public comment for agenda items only. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move to the,
It's okay. I just would make note for the record, now that we're back in March, public comments being taken in the room. Or if somebody had dropped off public comment at the blue drop box out front,
okay,
or had sent it to public comment at
so there's
newtowntownship.org.
nothing online.
So there was
anymore.
nothing online. I back up. I say that.
Not much of a public to comment here.
Uh,
Okay,
I do, hold on one second. I think something did come in today that we thought, and it is related. It's not on your agenda, so if we will take it at on number 13, there was an email that was sent in, and we'll address it at that time.
next item is the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as written?
I move.
Second?
second,
Been moved and seconded. Is there any board discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carried unanimously. Next is the minutes of the February 8th, 2022 meeting. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes?
I move.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion by the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Next on the agenda is a presentation from Kirsten Tallman on the mechanics of setting up a 5K run. Kirsten is on the board of the Valley Forge Tourism and Convention Center, and she's the director for the Revolutionary 5K run. So we're
Good evening.
very honored to have you here.
Thank you. Good evening. In case anybody here wants to register, it's a 5-mile run. You'll have to train a little bit longer than a 5K. Thank you for having me. I had spoken previously with Beth about an idea of maybe having a 5K for you having 5K and what that looks like. And I just want to give you guys a couple of minutes on some things to think about and what it takes to put on a race in this day and age, and with the savvy people that run and maybe don't run. Okay, so my base is passion fuels purpose, and you all sit here because that's what you do. Like, you have a heart for the trails and the greenways, and that's the passion that you have, and it fuels the purpose, which could be something like a fundraiser or an organizational piece for a 5K. Can you take the next slide, please? Thank you. This is one of my favorite photos I took when I was at Valley Forge National Historical Park with George Washington, and that says it all. You take your marching orders and you go. So if you're thinking about having a race, or if anybody's thinking about having an event, the purpose and the audience have got to be the filter system that you use for everything that you do. Obviously, you've got the passion for what you have, your trails, your area, your township, and your purpose. Why? Why are you doing a race? Why are you doing an event? Everybody and their brother thinks they can do a 5K these days. They do, you know. Some people do it, they're for profit. Some people are not for profit. Our office is not for profit that does the Valley Forge Revolutionary 5-mile run. So before I get into too much of this, let me just give you kind of a high level. We have been doing the race in Valley Forge National Historical Park for this will be our 16th year. We are the only race in that park. And that's because all the proceeds that we do go right back to the park. My office, the tourism board, does not take any cut off the top. We do not give it to third-party vendors. Everything that we raise, once all the bills have been paid, goes right back into the park. And so what we are for the tourism board is we want to make sure that when people come, they have a great experience, a lasting impression when they leave the park. And so the money that we give them back helps enhance that visitor experience when they come. And so I'm proud to say that after the 15 years we've been doing this as of last year, we've raised over $500,000 for the park. So we've got quite the following. Beth, thanks for wearing your shirt today. So, you know, I want you to think about that. You know, when you're doing things, you know, who is your audience and why are you doing it? And every decision that you make should absolutely fall into those two pieces, because that'll help you green light, red light some of your decisions. And then again, like I said, there's so many events out there. So many races, 5Ks and 5 miles and 10 miles and whatever distance they have. Why would they possibly choose yours? And so that's important. You know, it's in timing of the year. How many other races are around the same date that you want? What makes you special? And that could be your purpose and your passion combined. And it's definitely driven by your audience and what do they want and what's a benefit for them. So next slide, please. So a couple pieces, pillars here that I look at that are important for a race. The course, obviously, that's the thing that's going to draw them to you is what do you have? Are you a road race? Are you trails? So you have to have that identity fixed before you start promoting what you're doing. Road races have a different set of rules than trail races do. Our race is part of USATF, which is United States America Track and Field, sanctioned, highly regarded. And that's because it comes with a set of rules that people know and approve of and know that they're going to be safe. And it's held to a certain standard. So that is what I'll say, like a designer label on our races. We have that approval, sanction, and certification. They do also do trail races. I will mention that to you. There is a Grand Prix circuit, which is a group of races that are just trails. They're not road races, they're trail races. And so there's a bunch of people that do, I think there might be 6 this year, but the Mid-Atlantic USA Track and Field Grand Prix circuit does have a trails division. And so I will tell you, because of that, that's an audience builder, right? There's a capacity builder there because you've already got somebody that's doing different trail races all over. And it's, a couple of them pulled together, and then there's winners for how many of the trail races they go to or how many they win. So that has nothing to do with your race specifically, rather than just being included. So that's something to think about too. Who are your peripherals that you can reach out to that are going to make your event successful? And again, that's your audience. Support. Think about, aid stations. You need water stations. You need EMS. I'm going to pause on that for a minute because there are races out there that think it's okay that they have somebody that has first aid training that's hanging out by the start line. This is you're responsible for people that are coming in that are paying you money to do your race, to raise money for whatever you're doing. You owe it to them to be absolutely positively buttoned up as far as safety and health and wellness go. And that's with EMS. So it's going to be a cost, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but there's a cost for that. But at the end of the day, you're responsible for these people that you're bringing to your trails, and EMS, that's your safety net. So don't skimp on EMS. Parking, where are you going to put these people? Where are they going to park? Do you have enough people to park? Is it close to the start line? Is it easy in? Is it easy out? Logistics of parking, that's something to think about too, because that's a whole division of labor in itself, is moving people from the cars to the race course, back to their cars, and then on the roads. So nothing is unsafe. Volunteers, that's a big one. That's a really big one. Span of control, which I have down at the bottom. Whatever you decide to do, you have to have people that support your aid stations, which are your water stations, your EMS. They can be support. They shouldn't be volunteers EMS. You should have people that you can count on standby for that. But people that are helping with parking, people that are helping wayfinding, people that are handing out water, people that are at pinched off points on your trail as wayfinding. That's manpower, and that's not one or two people. Usually when you do volunteers, depending on your course, you work in pairs, and there's a reason for that, because it's a buddy system for safety for everybody. So think about that. Volunteers is a big one. And then the registration platform, how are you going to get them there? What platform are you going to use, which also ties into your marketing piece, right? How are you going to promote this race, and who to? And most times the turnkey for that is your registration platform. And so most popular platform right now is Run Sign Up. And it has a lot of bells and whistles. You would hire a timer that would come in and help you with your timing of your race, who is usually connected with the registration platform, meaning she would walk you through the steps and show you, he or she would walk you through the steps and show you how to set up the registration and the timing, and then troubleshoot as you're getting your registrations coming in. Remember, you're asking people for money to do a race for under your umbrella name for a purpose that you want to succeed. So you want to make sure that everything that you do is on the up and up and scale and buttoned up nice and tight, right? So, so that's the support that you need for as you do your race. Then the overhead. So the overhead, and I'm going to sort of dog-ear this as sponsors. This is where your sponsors come into play. For example, the Revolutionary 5 Mile Run, our sponsors, the sponsorship that we get pays for the overhead. And so the nice thing about that is we have a goal. We know what our overhead is ahead of time. What are the tents? What are the porta potties? What are the water? What are the t-shirts? What are the medals? What is the timer? All those pieces, overhead. If you can get your sponsor dollars, gold, to meet that, then all of the registration fees from your racers that sign up would go back into your, your check for whatever you want to raise your money for. So if you're trying to raise $10,000 for a trail, and forgive me if that's not what reasonable, but then you can say to your trail runner, your money is specifically going back in to get these trails done, or for whatever piece that you're trying to do. And as a runner and as a participant for your community, that's what they want to hear. They don't want to pay for your tents. They don't want to pay for your, the peripherals. They don't want to pay for that. But once they hear that their money is going directly back to enhance their experience and their community, they're in. Think about that. T-shirts, not cheap. Usually our biggest piece are not for our run. The biggest bill that comes in is our T-shirts. We usually have about 1,000 runners that tow up to the line, in addition to 250 walkers that also go at the same piece. So all said and done, we run between 1,200 and I'd say 1,300 people. This year might be a little bit different. We'll see. Awards, timer, we talked about porta johns, tents, insurance. A lot of times if the tent company comes in, if you're going to have this big, sort of an expo or celebration piece at the finish line, you want to have a tent put up. Well, unless you have it done through your township and you rent it from someone else, a tent company, you need to have insurance. Thinking about that. What if there's a windstorm? What if there's a, there's little things you have to think about that you're putting on an event. The water, the food, a lot of that stuff we have donated. And so I will say, when we have the food that comes to our expo, a lot of it's from the local community restaurants that they donate that. And we say, as long as you can feed 800 people, we won't charge you a sponsorship fee to sit at the expo center or at the expo. And I have for you when I leave our sponsorship packet. So you can take a look at that. You can see how we spell that out, our levels of sponsorship and what that gets you. So that'll kind of give you an idea of what you need to do and sort of break things down in an outline form for that. Permits, township is really good for permits. You could do it to yourself. Ours is really difficult just because we're in the National Historical Park. Much, much different. And again, we've got a great relationship with them. We have respect for what their job is, what their mission is. So we understand that we don't want to ruffle any feathers or disturb the land. And we button it up and cleaned up pretty nicely, like we weren't even there within a day after the race. And then the span of control, that's your staff tasks, who's ever going to do the pieces, and your volunteers. And so you can tap into local running groups, you can tap local like running stores. You've got some really great support people in Cheshire, in Newtown Square, actually, or Newtown. They're just the running place is one of them. I mean, they're buttoned up into this area. They used to help us too, and actually they helped us start Rev Run many, many years ago. So you're wealthy with your support staff that you have in your community, and so lean on them. But you can only lean on them if you know what you need to do. So hopefully you can take some of these pieces and understand what it takes to put on an event. But just remember, it's a brand for you once you start it, because you're asking for money and you have to produce something. And the production for the end user is something for them, like a trail to use in the future. And the more buy-in they get, the more years of success you will have, because it's part of them. Okay. Any questions? Sure.
Allowed to say, I mean, obviously your race is large. There's a lot of moving pieces. You guys bus parking lots. In general, what's your overhead?
No problem. So our overhead is usually about $30,000. And go ahead.
And from us talking.
Yes.
Opportunities?
Yes. So those sponsorships, some of them are through, community stakeholders. We do reach out to like TD Bank. TD Bank has a community service or community support that they will give like a grant program. Pico is a huge one. They have a certain, I think 3 or 4 different pillars. If you can fit your cause into one of their pillars and explain, you can grab money from Pico is a big one. The healthcare companies, so just so you know a little bit about our sponsors, we have like Einstein, Penn Medicine, UGI, AmeriGas, which is, it's a neighbor to the park. Again, you've got some big companies and schools and pieces around here. That's your community. You want it to look good. You want to show them off. And, it depends on what you promise them on the end of what your sponsorship is for your benefit. But there are grant pieces that you can do. For a while, Upper Merion, because we have that casino at Valley Forge, they were giving back money to the township, and then they did a community board of assistance, and you could apply for for a grant from them. And they give to all different kinds of little league funds, and whatever they give, it has to support something within their township. And I don't know if you have anything like that here, but think about that. There are stakeholders, and there's big blue chips around here that definitely may have something that you can dive into. Again, the Fortune 500s are aplenty here. Some of them already have their pieces, United Way or a different charity that they may already be working with. But you never know until you ask. And a lot of times, if you go to these bigger corporations, you can go to the top and see what their community giving is and go from that.
As far as the EMS stuff is concerned, is that something that if we went to like the EMS companies and everybody locally here providing, is that something that I'm assuming it's based on the registration you have on how much service you need to cover that kind of stuff?
For sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Is that something that they know offhand because they're used to doing these events, or
Well, it would depend. It depends on your distance, how much of a footprint that they have to cover, right?
Okay.
And yes, and then your participation. So we go to Upper Merion, and Upper Merion, who's now pulled together with all of their fire, EMS, all that stuff pulled together. They will give us 2 police officers for some traffic control pieces. They will give us a standby unit ambulance. And then they used to give us a bike unit, which would have been, 2 or 3 people, but they were the ones on the course, so we could help, out on the 5-mile course. So you can kind of tell them what you want. But as far as how many people that they need, what you really need is you need an ambulance there in case something happens, or any kind of medic at the finish line. And again, it depends on, Ours is a very hilly 5 miles. We see people we're worried about, but we haven't had any problems. But, if you're doing a trail race, it changes a little bit there. So, yeah, work with the township to see, between the police and the EMS. And then sometimes, the township would have their, like the law enforcement with Park Service, they're trained, they're trained EMS, and they can help as a subsidiary, but you really need to have medics visible on site.
And then you mentioned the 30K overhead for the Rev Run is what you have now, but obviously you said it's 16 years you've been doing it. So that's definitely probably dramatically increased from when you were.
Not so much.
Really? So you're saying that even in the early years of you doing it, when it wasn't as large of a force, you were still
Well,
around that number?
I should take that back because we didn't have as many, I'll say bells and whistles, but this year I can speak to this year, everything goes up. Now everybody wants a deposit or they want something because they all got burned a couple of years ago when COVID hit and they lost their money because everything shut down. So, I did see a couple increase in prices, like with the porta johns and the tents. And they're adding in all kinds of admin fees. So, but for the most part, if I budget us at $30,000 for sponsorship, which I know is going to cover my overhead, I'm good.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like in the infancy, the early years, if it was because the scope of what you're doing, you weren't expecting as many people, maybe it wasn't
Right.
as well known, that maybe those overhead costs would have been a little bit less. I'm trying to gauge.
Right. So, and being infancy, you could ask, hey, we're trying this out. Would you help us out? You know what I mean? Ask for a favor and see how that goes. And then you build those relationships. And at some point, like Upper Marion never used to charge us. Like, oh, we're doing it for the park, and they wouldn't charge us. And now they're like, well, we can't charge, Fred's piece and not yours, which is of course. So, we went for having no money for that to like a $800 bill, so it does go a little bit for that way. I mean, there has been a change in that.
Yeah, I mean, I like the model though, of trying to get sponsors, donors to cover everything you have on your overhead so that, like you said, I mean, that is a good positive message. I'm just trying to do the math in my head and think about it.
So think about like what you need. Again, think about what that looks like and what you need, what you have. Like, what can you beg, borrow, and steal from the township that wouldn't cost, and I don't know that. I don't want to put that in anybody's brain, but that's something that you could think about.
Okay, thank you very much.
If we wanted to go a little bit smaller, how far can we go and still be a viable event?
It depends. That's a hard question to answer because it depends on who's coming and how they're connected. So you could have an event of 100 people, where, you shouldn't come out the gate thinking you're going to have 500 people sign up. Again, because everybody has a race. You have to establish yourself. So, there's got to be some kind of hook to get them in. And I don't know what that would be for you, but there's some kind of hook that you can get them in. It's not a huge monetary that you can build off of. Again, if you are speaking to your audience as a stakeholder in this community and what it has for them and something that they can get behind and be proud of, that's how you're going to build the numbers, the capacity. The other thing I can say is if you have these companies that are coming in that maybe not be a sponsor because they can't, but they can get you teams, they can get you registrations. So a lot of the companies where they may not be able to give you sponsorship because they're committed to like the United Way or something different, will say, part of our healthcare plan, we will pay for 40 registrations for our staff members. Well, there's 40 people, and whether you call them a team or just registered runners or whatever, you could do it that way. And a lot of times, again, like Jansen, that's over in Chesterbrook, they used to send, at one point they were sending 75 people as a team. Yeah. And the company paid for all their registrations. That was well beyond a sponsorship level for us. We're like, okay. But think about that. So that's how you can capacity build, is go through teams. And going through teams, you would go through a corporate office to do so.
Mainline health, maybe.
Absolutely. Mainline Health is one of ours. And a lot of times if they can't give you monetary donations, sponsorships, they will say, can we give you volunteers? But the key with that is you need to make sure that you are training these volunteers, remember, because they're not doing what you do every day. They're just showing up to help, and they need to have directions on how to help. So somebody needs to be able to speak the language to get this. So, because again, your reputation is on the line. You want this to be successful. So, and then don't price yourself out of an event. You know, don't have a 5K trail race that's $50. That's kind of rude, especially the first year. You can increase it over time, you know, and you may have somebody that would pay $50 for a trail race. They may want a medal, they may want a long sleeve shirt. Well, there's your overhead creeping up, right? So, you know, you start small and you gain their trust, and then you build capacity from that. Does that answer your question?
I think it does.
Okay.
Do you remember what your entry fee was the first year?
The very first year, it was probably $25, and now we're up to 45.
Okay.
So yeah, that's not a lot of movement. And, you know, and a lot of times we'll give discounts, and, you know, now we don't even deal with that. It's just like, look, $45.
So if a company, for example, registers a team or a school registers a team, it's same, it's 45 per person.
And so we also have a walk component to ours, and the walk is 30.
Okay.
Yes, the prices change a little bit.
Sorry, go ahead.
And you have an online.
Well, and this year we're doing virtual
component
too, right? So yeah, we did so well at virtual last year. We were able to raise $42,000 in a virtual race. We had people from 4 different countries and 25 different states. And, you know, they all wanted to be connected to Valley Forge. I mean, again, there's your brand, there's your heartstring that we were working with people, and they were on and they were in. So the people from Germany, they ran our race 10 years ago. And like, we ran that, you know, in 2011. And they're like, we are now back in Germany and you have a virtual component. We'd love to do that again. So they signed on from Germany and they ran in Germany. It was great. But, you know, it's just, again, passion fuels purpose.
Connected to John's question though, with the size of it, is the sanctions you had mentioned, having a sanctioned race and certifications. I'm imagining though, to get some of that, there's the rules, but it's possible that people and the size of the event and certain stipulations have to go on as far as like safety and whatnot else, but
Correct.
is there a size component to that as well?
Not so much.
Okay.
No, not so much. And, you know, what that would really do is, you know, making sure that your course is measured properly. So when you say you're a 5K, you're a legit 5K. Because, you know, runners have the smartwatches that they'll call you on it. It's not, you know, and if you're going to give prizes, yeah, if you're going to give prizes, you got to be, you know, like we give our overall top 1, 2, and 3 get cash prizes, you know, and so, you know, the top male and top female are running for $400, $500, you know, most races don't do that. You know, if you can give cash, that's great. They want cash. But again, you have to work up to that kind of stuff. But for the sanctions, they do dictate some of the rules that you need to work under. And most times it's for your safety and the safety of the runner. And then again, for the distance of the course.
Yeah, I would imagine it wouldn't be as, you know, obviously it's crazy if it was something where this race then qualified you for some bigger race. We were talking marathon distance.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. But like
Yeah.
you said, safety, making sure that it's just not rogue, crazy stuff going on.
You need organization.
Yeah.
And you know what? My best recommendation is find a trail race out there that is similar to you. Maybe not in Chester County. Maybe it's someone, you know, look at their website. What are they offering? You know, look at their results. That'll tell you how many people ran in that race, you know? And so then you can start watching how they loaded up, what they're giving and their time frame and their prices and how many people were actually crossing the finish line, you know, as a participant number. But do your homework. You know, do your homework on what that looks like, and do your homework on making sure that you don't have it on the like the 4th of July when everybody's, or a turkey trot when everybody's having a race. Don't do that to yourself. Spread it out.
All of our events have already been scheduled during bad weather, so it's no different.
Your bad weather
Yeah.
make you stronger.
We seem to attract it.
Yeah.
How many elements of a 5K race is the running place able to pull together if we wanted to lean on them for a lot of our support?
So I don't know if they do timing, but they certainly would
I don't
have
think they
connection with
do.
somebody that does
Mhm.
timing, and I would absolutely reach out to them. They are going to be a huge resource for you. If not them doing it, but them saying, you know, go to Bryn Mawr Running Company and let them do your time. Like they are an excellent resource for you.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Those guys are great.
Uh, Any other questions?
As far as those, meeting the markers for the standards for the, like, track and field association, is there online resources we can find, or training? So I mean, if that's a goal that we have, like,
Yep.
where we can find more info.
So what I would do for that is I would look under Mid-Atlantic USATF. And there is Trail Race Grand Prix. And usually the rules and regs are there. If not, then the contact, and I sit on the board of directors for USATF, so I could get you in contact with that if you want that.
How long did it take to plan your first race? In terms of timeframe
That's
that
a-
we should think about?
That's a great question. So it was probably almost a year in the making for the very first one. And, and that's, you don't know what you don't know. Like the group, when we started that way back in 2006, 5, 6, nobody knew, we knew what we wanted to do, but we pulled in Joan, I can't think of her last name, that was from the running place. And she helped us get that together. We pulled together people that's what they did. They knew the racing community, and they knew all the peripherals that we would need, and brought them in. But a year, you need to think about that, because you're planning your calendar, and then you're planning what your project is going to be, or what you're working towards. But you're doing your homework on what you need to do, how much you need to raise, how much you need to spend. In that. So I'd say your first year, don't think you can plan it in a couple months. That's crazy. Do your homework. If you want to last, your homework. Yep. Good.
Okay.
So I
Thank you very
have
much.
the sponsorship. Can I leave it with you? Does it matter who I
Sure.
leave it with? Okay.
You've given us a lot of food for thought.
I
there.
hope I did.
Good things to
Thank
think
you.
Very
about.
much. Yes.
Yeah.
Super, absolutely super.
Okay, great. Okay, my business card is
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great, thank
were
you so
great.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job, Beth.
Yeah.
So
Next under new business is what we want to do on the 5K. So let me open that up to the floor here.
So, number one, I just asked Beth a question of when is the next Rev Run? She was saying it's like really close. It's like April 24th.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the virtual component, so you have a week if you sign up virtually to run your 5 miles wherever you choose to run it. They have a path through the park that you could run that would be similar to the path that you would run on race day, but you get to run it at your own time. So that starts April 16th, and then the actual in-person race is on the 24th. And the way she has it set up, it corresponds with National Park Week, which usually we have Junior Ranger Day at one end of it, and then you have Rev Run at the other end. So it's kind of tied into other events happening too.
Well, I'm just thinking, the reason I brought that up is I'm just thinking if they have a run and they have a walk portion, that it would be a good opportunity for as many of us as possible to actually sign up and do it for the purpose of, she gave us a lot of really good information. She had
Mhm.
answers to nearly every question that I'm writing down questions, she's answering them as she's going on. But I think being there, actually doing one ourselves, doing the walk, doing the run, whatever it is, so that we could physically see some of the stuff, because there's going to be things that she wasn't able to cover today. It might pop in our head. I mean, I'm literally thinking about running with my notebook and pencil just so I could stop and, oh, we didn't talk about that. Because the first step is obviously we'd have to start budgeting. We'd have to start thinking about all those overhead costs and coming through it. So just, this is my method, is actually doing so that we could prepare a proper budget to understand those overhead costs, and then try to scale it as best we can for the size of event that we're thinking is possible, not, and being realistic about it. There are certain resources, obviously, we could talk to the township about. I mean, I'm completely ignorant of this. Is our EMS staff part of township, or is that private?
It's a third party.
Okay. But it's contracted through the township?
Yes.
Okay, So like little things like that, that's things that we can find out and talk to people in cost, but a lot of the actual day of operations and trying to get a sense of how many volunteers they have for the size of race they have will allow us to scale back and come up with our own quantities and start thinking about all these things, come up with a budget. It's going to be a while, it sounds, but I don't know, it just seems like a convenient time where we're all kind of very motivated and it's fresh in our minds to get some things down on paper and start it. Because if it's going to take that long, the worst thing we could do is procrastinate now about, well, we can get to that. But those are the early building blocks. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Okay. Amy.
Pause. You know, we have an item that was mentioned. But I want to have idea, but not to the minute we do it, we say we're going to do it. I would like to bring it back to our audience. Is the best? Oh, I'm a runner. I would sign up. Eddie. More discussion. Pause. So are we now in club? Anyway, that's my perspective.
Well, I agree with you. Amy, I was wondering what the tie-in is to our mission of creating more trails. Most recently, our assignments of chairing, moving forward with new trails in the township. So I was wondering, is that tie-in, the way that's written on the agenda, this is the Newtown Meadow Preserve 5K run. That's a draft of what we're calling it, but is that to raise money to create a parking lot at the Meadow Preserve, or to create a connection from the Meadow Preserve, create a trail from there through Echo Valley to Goshen Road? I mean, I think that if we were to do a fundraiser in any way, it would have to be very specifically tied to what we're doing here as our quick hits. We're trying to get more trails into the township. So it's a very organized, big project. I don't know that we're ready to take that on right now, a big fundraising effort, in addition to us as a first year committee trying to learn our roles here, chairing new trails, working with the township, getting all of our ducks in a row. We need to prioritize what we're doing with our trails in the township first, I think, before we discuss fundraising.
So I'm a little torn. Like, I can see both arguments, for doing it or for holding off for a little bit. What is potential? I mean, we're so different. If there's a way where we can make this work and be a regular thing, now we have this extra income that isn't reliant on grants. It may not be the $600,000 to put in a sidewalk for 3 miles or whatever. It may be the $10,000 to, lay down gravel, do repairs on the Goshen Trail, get tools so we can have volunteers go out and do that type of stuff, put up signage, make sure there's, maintenance issues, talking about putting in a bathroom potentially at the Meadow Preserve, making sure, having a pot for that stuff being maintained that a grant may not necessarily pay. So I would say, if we could make a laundry list of like where that money could be used, repeated costs, maintenance type of stuff. I think that could help justify or not justify what we want to do. And if it could take reliance off of grants, which could be hit or miss, it could be a benefit. But I realize, we are new, we're just starting out, and do we want to jump into something that is definitely a consideration.
Yeah, let me be very clear. Sorry, I just want to make this one point. I was only making that suggestion. I don't think anything is actionable at this point. I'm saying in our own personal time. It doesn't, I'm not saying everybody do it.
Suggestions, so it wasn't at all directed at you, was, all of our comments so far, like we were going full speed ahead. And I just wanted to, again, hit a pause, because something like this. But again, I've had an opportunity to talk, and certainly.
So if I can interrupt just 1 second, before you go too far down a road, I'm going to, I need to go back to our solicitor and even find out whether you as the committee of the township can actually even do this. We have some guidelines about how we can do certain things about fundraising and things like that. So I need to just make sure that it falls within those guidelines if you're going to do it as a fundraiser. When you originally talked about this, I thought you were just doing it as an activity to get people exposed to our trails. If you're doing it as a fundraiser, I need to find out. There's only so many ways we can take in money. And so I just need to verify whether we can do that or not. So let me do some of that before you spend a whole lot of time investing in that, because I'd hate to see you invest in something that I would turn around and say, I don't know if we can even legally do that, because the second-class township code very specifically talks about what we can charge for certain things and what we can do. And I just need to make sure that this doesn't fall into an area that would step outside of that.
Okay. That brings us really nicely to the next point on the agenda.
Okay. One more thing. Is it generally agreed that if we do something, it probably won't be this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Joe, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm just gonna interject. I mean, it was redundant what Steve said. I mean, my opinion on this is, we're representative of township, not a nonprofit or a for-profit. And so the idea of having to raise money, I mean, at the end of the day, we're coming up with activity, or we're coming up with projects that we may will be funded by this township. But are gonna have to go to the board, the township supervisors, and they will, they'll either put money from the coffers that they have or use the grant money that we have or anything like that. Even if we were to raise money, I don't even know if we can even authorize the use of that money for, payment of a coffee mug. I don't think we can do that. I think it would dovetail well to work on a project, for instance, the rails trail feasibility that we're doing between Greer Park and Brookside. Once that's opened, or to introduce that based off of where we come, to have a third party that then sponsors a 5K for us to do that. And then we collaborate much the same way I'm sure the 4th of July party is performed. That's a cooperation with Marple Township and Newtown Township. I don't believe that's Marple Township or Newtown Township actually actively, promoting the 5K or being in charge of that.
Just
But
the venue, essentially.
right, I think it's something that we can work on because it is a long-term project. Looking how we can partner with someone, but I think it should be coupled with something that we develop as a project and further through this group. So for instance, a development, like I said, if we have new trails that are open up or as part of the master plan, I think it's something that we could do.
In your experience, do you think that if we did have a third party do all that, can they act as the fundraising source, that if it specifically goes back into the trails, can we even accept the money at that level?
I
We're
would
not
think,
acting
I mean,
on that?
we've accepted money for certain things, yes. So, I mean, I don't want to say it's absolutely 100% no. I just don't know that we can do
That's a
it
good
as a
point.
committee.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can do it as a committee of the township. I think Joe is giving an option of a way that it could be done. that would make sense. I mean, we know that there's the Friends of the Library that actively raises funds for the library. And so that's totally fine, but that's a separate organization. I mean, some of the same volunteers volunteer at the library, that volunteer on the Friends of the Library don't, I understand that. We've got a very similar situation with the Bartram Bridge. We have the Friends of the Bartram Bridge. And they're, some of the same people that are on that committee are on both committees, and that's fine. But they're two separate organizations, and they're doing their fundraising.
Okay, let's move on. We have 8.2, discussion and potential action on future trail walks. I'd like to go a little bit out of order and get some feedback on the trail walk we just had. So, Terry McCarthy.
We had a great walk on Sunday. There were 120 registrations on the meetup and a wait list of like 50 at one point. We did have kind of punky weather predicted, but it was okay when we got there. The weather did deter probably about 50 people. So we were a ballpark of 70. We had 5 trail guides, Beth, John, myself, Amy, and one of the executives from Garrett Williamson, Giselle. And after it was over, the feedback was 15 5-star reviews, 7 endorsements written out on just the meetup. The feedback was they loved being involved in a group event. And they loved learning something. Those were the top 2 points, which is interesting to get that. So the questions that I'm receiving now is, when's the next trail walk? Are you going to try Drexel Lodge again? We'd like to see that. And can you do more than one a month? And my goodness, what do you guys think? But I think we do want to also establish that if we can get a walk that goes to the library, Beth's event is going on there right now and into next month. So that, and she got over 1,000 hits on on our library post about that show and hundreds of likes. And so people are very happy about that show. It's the first one in 2 years. I think if we made that part of the walk somehow, that would generate goodwill, again, community learning. She could give a little talk about whatever you like. And that kind of supports our trails and greenways and environmental and nature things. So I'd like to offer that as a suggestion for the next one, to do either Drexel Lodge or even a real short walk. Because the library is not open a lot. So that's another, it's not a Sunday thing. Can't do it on Sunday.
Sort of tying in some of our walks to like the Historical Society and stuff like that. And I, not to self-promote at all, but a lot of the pictures were taken in the township. So it is promoting like local wildlife, the resources that we have, which I think ties into the greenways and trails that we're trying to promote. So I think it could fit the purpose of this group nicely.
I also want to do a shout out to Beth's son, Jared, who was wonderful. He was a camp counselor.
Oh, he's just a camper.
He's a camper, but he was such a poor young gentleman, and he really helped the people on the walk, just explaining what camping.
Thank you.
Really a pleasure.
I think having the multiple
Have
groups
an
is
emerging.
Yeah.
I also like the idea. Etc. And so anyway, maybe something. What about the, or where we're talking about hooking up back of the lot there. So
Leonard actually.
Idea, you didn't know, like getting. But I like the idea.
Well, the most questions generated in some of our previous walks were when we were doing the Goshen Trail and we ended, and John gave a big explanation as to, we're hoping to continue this trail and connect through this property. And then he gave a little bit of history about it. And that was where it generated a lot of the questions. And a lot of the afterwards, when we were going back, a lot of people were following up, at least with me, asking questions. And I think similarly, every time we got to a point where this is where we want to connect in. So that's a good idea. If we're already planning on connecting in trail segments there, even if it's shorter, having that education as to what's there, what our plans are, and the history of it. Thank you.
Or not to derail Beth's presentation, but could the map, the master plan, could there be some sort of brief overview, just explaining to the people there, just to ground them? So, here you have the nature, you have all the gems, the hidden gems within our community, and then just tie that into a brief thing with the big blow up map, et cetera, that might ground them. So this could be a little walking and a little bit more, here's the big picture.
Yeah, I happen to sit on a couple of other boards. I was at the last Historical Society meeting. They're very much interested in partnering with us for their Newtown Square Day on June 4. Also, Gather in the Circle talked about maybe a walk from Greer Park to the Circle and then to the Farmers Market. So that could be a little bit shorter than some of the others, but I think there are a lot of possibilities and a lot of people interested in joining with us to help pull it off.
I'm gonna throw out just another possibility, and you guys can totally shoot it down. I mean, we've been focusing on walking. We have bike lanes. We're looking at connecting, the bike lanes to different walking trails that you could potentially ride your bike on too. Like, what about having a bike ride? We probably have to limit the number of people on that, just because you don't want like 100 people crossing Westchester Pike on a bike at one time. But, using some of these other resources that we're, trying to put into place and just offering it to a different group of users that we are trying to also reach.
Are you saying using the same mechanism through the meetup?
Yeah, and I mean, I love the meetup. The meetup is great for getting, people out there and stuff like that. Where it's failing a little bit is in getting township people. We get some township people, but when we asked, probably only a third that raised their hand were from the township. So, maybe that's where we, advertise in the grocery stores, at the bank, trying to find more local forums to get those crowds to. I mean, I would say don't get rid of the meetup, because the meetup is great, and you never know, you might find that one person who is so gung-ho about it all. You don't want to, even if they're not from the township, they may be like, yes, I got the resources, I got the people, you don't want to miss that chance. But reaching out to some other sources and maybe reach some different groups that aren't just hikers and walkers, because we have trails and bike routes that aren't just for people on feet.
Where are we on a Friends of Newtown Township Trails Facebook and/or Instagram?
This is the magazine. This is our article. Just went into the mailboxes. We got a 2-page spread. It's also online. I think the reason that we didn't get that many township people this time was because this is not township property. And I wasn't permitted really to put it on Facebook or Nextdoor or the Patch, which I would normally do. But Garrett Williamson was like 120 people. Wait a minute. So if we do township things, I don't have any caveats saying, no, Terry, stop it. I mean, we have 333 members right now of that meetup group. It's going up about 100 a month. So y'all have a problem. We got 1,000 people on the Goshen Trail, but that's not my problem. But I'm happy that, the enthusiasm is great. I'm just trying to focus so that I can have an approval to plan the next one. If you would just help me there for April.
So if I could make a recommendation, so, obviously you have April to think about we're getting ready to release the township newsletter in another week. If you knew your next 3 events for May, June, and July, they could be in that release. And so, you know, I think the thing is, I do think there's a couple things you need to think about. One is, are you all wanting to do one of these a month? It takes a lot of energy to do this. So you have to decide, is that one of the priorities, you know, because right now what you're trying to do is build interest in township trails. And I mean, I assume that's why you're doing this and putting all that energy, and it is a lot of energy. But the second piece of that would be, if we can plan out like 4 months in advance, we can help you get the word out to the township residents to increase the township residents' participation. One of my problems is that we have to get all the information into the newsletter on March 15th for release on May 7th, 6th. Yeah,
March 15th for May 6th.
for May 6th release. So, I mean, you understand that's about a month and a half, a little over, almost 7 weeks lead time. That when you guys make a decision to do April's event,
It's too late.
it's too late.
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying to you, as you think about what you want to do and accomplish, if you're thinking about future rail trail walks, or not rail trail walks, but future trail walks, then if you could think about literally 4 months out, it would help us to support you with the methods that we have to get that word out to some folks that we might not get it out any other way to. We do have about somewhere between 500 to 1,000 hits every month on our website, but I don't know that they're looking at well, I don't always know what they're looking at when they go to our website. I know how many hits we're getting. And some months it's higher. I mean, it's been as high as 3,000, but so that's not a lot when you look at a community of, you know, we're roughly about we 15,000 folks. You know, that's not a lot of hits if you're looking at trying to get that out. The newsletter, I know, ends up in every person's home. And so that's a great way to make sure we get it out there.
It's sent through the mail. It's not email.
No, it's sent through the mail.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'd eventually like to get electronic copies going to folks as well, but right now that's how it is.
Well, yes, I don't want to be too dismissive, but that's where things getting up in your mailbox is, I don't know, maybe it's just me, a different generation. Like most of the crap, even if it's something that I'm interested, if it doesn't grab me, it's going in the trash.
Well, here's what I will tell you. I've had multiple people tell me they are reading that newsletter.
That's good.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I realize it doesn't hit everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I know, if I want to be effective, I've got to be doing it about 15 different ways
Yep.
today.
Well, so
And
that was what I was going to talk about. It's not, that's important, but I think what I am so active, even by accident, on the Newtown Square Facebook page, that gets a lot of traffic. And that's still to this day, the amount of comments that I received through that, and from Leonard reposting, hey, we had this event, or hey, this event's coming up, that still gets a lot of traction. So that's my point. It's the multi-pronged approach of, if we had a digital version of that
Sure.
newsletter and being able then to get that onto that source, that's what I'm talking about. That would be another great step in that multi-pronged approach, because we want to reach, we just talked about it, we got to reach different audiences. That's the idea with the biking, is good from the perspective of reaching a different audience. You know, the meetup has been good, but we need to now figure out how to get more township residents. There's the running place has a running group that runs through my neighborhood all the time, which is then connected to Greer Park. So if we have another event, that could be a way where we would tie in with that running group, which is tons of township residents, in a different way than we've already done it. So instead of it being the walk, you have the run, and then at either the beginning or completion of the run, ending at Greer Park, and explaining and showing the plans and the artist rendering of the plans there, the rail trail, how it connects in. those are people that would be interested that are already township residents and already a part of the community, which would be another good one. So again, I think hitting as many new options as possible because we only have so many trails existing in Clark. So we're going to run out of places. We've already, each month we've done a different place. But May, June, July, if we did one each month, like we're pretty much out of existing locations. So we need to change then the method of how we do it maybe. to
May
reach
I
more
offer
people.
that does make sense. And if you need a stable of environments to offer via your newsletter and online, I would always defer to the Goshen Trail because you can go Meadows, you can go down there and you can walk into Ellis. So if you just said that we're always going to have that option every month, that's your core site. And you also are trying to get people to go there on historic day. And so if we just say, okay, we're just going to default to that in the newsletter and we'll just do one there every month, I could definitely see us all saying, okay, well, we've got 60 people that want to do a long walk. They're going to go to the Meadows and Beth's going to take them. and I'm going to do Goshen Trail. And then for the people who want a flat trail, they can go to the Ellis and you'll be like, come on, let's go. And then Drexel is a nice to have. Drexel's not a long walk. I don't know how everybody feels about Drexel Lodge. It's beautiful, but it's short, right? Not, where can you go from there except on streets to get here, right?
I mean, yeah, you could take the bike lanes up, which then go all the way up Campus Boulevard and across into the neighborhoods. It connects
Right.
to the trail that goes through Nell and ultimately wraps around here. You could go down, is it Ellis Avenue? I mean, I know there's no sidewalks yet, but that could eventually take you to Ellis Preserve. So there's some options to kind of expand and kind of what you're saying. Maybe we say every other month it's at the same location, and that month in between is where we flip it around and like, okay, we'll go between Goshen, between Drexel Lodge, like say every other month is at the Meadow. And then, you know, the next month is Goshen Trail. The next month is right over here at Nell. The next month is Drexel Lodge, you know, but you kind of have that one. So every second month, you know exactly where it's going to be, and it's just less planning to have to do.
It's like more of a special event every other month at a different.
Yeah. So
trail,
you have
and
kind of
every
the
other
regular
month
place, and then
is-
you have the special place where you're mixing it up a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, instead of just saying every month is the same location, I mean, I know that will make our life a whole lot easier, but I think some people will start getting tired of it. So being able to kind of mix in, you know, like, you know, what
I
mean?
think this needs to be taken offline into like more of like a subcommittee. And my comment would be, John, that like Steve was saying, if we are going to do a meeting, a trail walk every month, I think from an organizational standpoint on this committee, like that might need to be your job.
It is my job.
As opposed to.
That's what I'm doing.
I mean, and in terms of the org chart too, like you don't necessarily need to be involved. Like the next thing on the agenda item is, you know, who's owning and chairing, actually building new trails and stuff like that. I feel like you're doing all of this, and I feel like we need more of a structure. Like Terry's doing this every month. There's a trail walk, and every other month it's going to be at the Goshen Trail, and every other month it's going to be a special event. And you're already doing it. You're doing all of the promotion, all of the organization. And then you bring that, like each of us who's chairing a trail brings to our meetings an update on where we are with it. I'm just sort of missing like the organization of like the process kind of what we're doing. Does that make sense to anyone? Because like the question I asked after you said we needed more township people to come to the trail walk my question was, where are we on the Facebook and social media pages? So that like my follow-up question was going to be, can I meet with you to get them started? Because you had said several meetings ago that you guys need to be involved from a township point of view in us creating Friends of Newtown Trails, Facebook and Instagram.
No. So what I said was that as the Trails and Greenways Committee of the township, you need to use the township's Facebook page and or is it Instagram or what? I don't know the one we have. Whatever our
Okay.
social media is what needs to be used. If you're going to create a Friends of the Trails and Greenways Committee outside of that role, outside of this role, that's fine. And you can do that, but you have to distinguish that you're not the township committee taking the action, if that makes sense.
Right.
So, if you create and yeah, Bartram Bridge is a good example in that they've created a Friends of Bartram Bridge. Now they've gone as far as they did a 503C. I mean, they've taken it, made it, given it some meat. In addition, I believe the same is true of the Friends of the Library, but they have a separate meeting. It's separate and apart. They've got their, I mean, I think their chair is the same, but it's a separate and apart action group that takes action and does things. I think that I would only say to you as a group, you're new, you're getting started, you have an incredible amount of enthusiasm, and all of that's great. I think what you need to figure out for yourselves is, what are our priorities? What are we really trying? I mean, I understand the purpose of the walks, and I think they're great. I think they give exposure to our trails. I think they give exposure to the need for more trails. And I think that's probably, if we get those two things from that, those are huge wins for the township. And so I'm not saying don't do them. I'm saying if you're doing those, make it so that you're not, I mean, that's a lot of work. I mean, I hear you say this and I'm thinking, you're doing a lot to make that happen every month. And that's a lot of energy. And so how does that fit in with the other things that you're trying to accomplish?
That was sort of my
That is
point.
a good
You
point.
know,
Yeah.
I get a little bit concerned that you're going to get so far spread out
That's my
that,
concern.
that you won't have the energy to do what the real goal, ultimate goal of your group is to help us to make additional connections to the trails we have now, and in other places, put trails that we don't have any.
I think one of the reasons that I brought in a lot of speakers early on was to promote outside groups. And I think maybe this time is set now to bring these together, come up with an independent group, whether it's Friends of Marple Newtown Trails as key, or there's amalgamation of different groups. But let them do some of that stuff without direct usage of all of us.
Can I ask a question related to that? You're saying that there's other ways and examples that this has been done before, where it's the same chair and a lot of the same people. How do we avoid the Sunshine Act issues there when it's like a
Well,
separate group, but it's a lot of the same people? And there's a potential-
What I tell them is they have to keep it very clear. You have a mission, you have a direction based on how you were set by resolution, what it is that you're doing as the Trails and Greenways. If you create a Friends of the Trails and Greenways or Friends of Trails of Newtown, whatever you want to call yourselves, I would tell you, you're going to need to keep very distinctly the differences between the two. And so what I would say is, if you decided that the trails, the Friends of the Trails and Greenways was going to take on, and I'm just going to say the monthly walks, and then I would say this group just doesn't discuss it. When you're meeting in this setting, that's not a discussion, because that's not something that you're carrying through. If you're going to take on, like, for example, I think that the run is a fine idea. I just don't know that that's the role of this group. And if you were going to have if that group was going to do that, and you talk about having a 5K run, and you do that as the Friends of the Trails in Newtown, that's not a problem. And you don't talk about it. And you only talk about that at that meeting. You couldn't talk about the fact that we've got a grant to go out and work on the feasibility study between Career Park and Brookside. Okay, that was where it would become a problem. And you would have to work really hard at that as a group if there's multiple ones of you on both. And you may say, one of you will serve on it just so that you kind of know what they're doing and let other people go and take off. I mean, if you've got 300 people that are interested right now, how many of those are in Newtown, or how many of those are, and want to kind of do that? And you may find that there's a group that's willing to take that on, and you can stay and do what, your focus is here. That's just my one thing that I would suggest to you as a group, because there's 100,000 good ideas out there. I mean, really, there's some great ideas, and you guys throw them out almost every meeting. I'm like, yeah, that's great, but you've got to decide where your energies are going to be and what you're going to try to do and what you're going to try to accomplish and where your priorities are going to be.
Yep, that's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, to tie it back into what we were talking about on these walks, the three things I just want to summarize that we thought were really important is someone providing the history of the Newtown Township, geography of the walk. And then the second thing is the mission of the Trails and Greenways Committee, what we're doing out there, why we're holding these walks. We're trying right now initially to promote the trails that we have. And then the third piece is fitting that into what our long-term plan is, which if Terry's currently, since we don't have a friends committee, and I would suggest maybe we're not ready for one, while she's working on these walks to publicize the current trails that we have, then the third piece is fitting it into the bigger picture of where we want to go, how we want to connect these trails, get people's awareness brought up a level from the walk to what we see as our charter for the future, how we're connecting them, what we think that the trail connections are going to look like. I would say those are the three things that we cover on our walks, and those are sort of our quick hits short term as a new committee. And then the rest of us are working on building more trails.
Yeah, well, can I offer that at the last walk, at every walk, Leonard has explained all of those topics at every single walk. And not only him, last time he had Elaine Schaefer there, 2-3 other politicians from different trails funding organizations. And she stood up and she said, I did the Radnor Trail or something to that effect, and this is exciting, and I want to get money to you. Yeah. That's the goal that I think we're all committed to, but these things get you the publicity. Yeah. That was a political thing.
Sure.
It turned into one.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, because you got money, come along,
Yep.
I guess what I'd like to add is I think what we're saying here might help is we really need a goal here. So in other words, if we're going to do these walks monthly, what will success look like? What's the goal? Or as Aaron has outlined here, so that everything we do, we want to have either some history, some geography, geology, botany, I don't care, something about the natural place of Newtown. And then I think both the mission and this aspect of community, because I think all of us are trying to make Newtown Square not only a better place for all of us to live, but for people to look at Newtown Square and go, wow, this is a great place, look at what these folks have done. So maybe if we frame things like, so at the end of the year, like, are we trying to increase the numbers? Is it different people each time? Can we have people sign in, at least as what county they're in, so we know who we're attracting? But I wonder, since, and I admit, I don't know if once a month I'm going to be able to lead these, although I love to hike. But maybe since we have Beth's photography thing now, can we really pare it down, and it will be more a talk on the botany of this area and things like that, the geology, and then have something where it is a presentation of like the master plan, because no one of the public that I know of since this committee has started have seen that. And
let me cut you off here, folks. A lot of good ideas, and I think it's something to think about, but we have a long agenda.
We do.
And we
Yeah, we
don't
do,
want to be
yeah.
here till
Time
midnight.
check at 7:25 now.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw in, purpose of our thing is to get buy-in from the public for what this committee is supposed to do, and then get stewardship. So people that are going to care about the trails and want to take I think that kind of summarizes everything we've been saying, is buy-in and stewardship.
And mostly at the end of every walk, we get comments back asking how can township residents get involved? So I'm just gonna summarize this in the minutes,
In the minutes.
okay?
Okay,
I know you want to move on, and I'm going
I
to
do.
just say this one thing.
unless you have beds to bring in here.
No, I don't, but do you know what your next 3 walks are? I mean, I think you need to know what your next 3 walks are before you walk out of here tonight. If you want to
Yeah.
continue to do those, I know there's other things on this that you may want to skip tonight to make sure you know what your next 3 walks are.
Terry,
and
you have a
that
good
would be
idea
my
you could
comment.
recommend?
Drexel Lodge.
Is that for April?
I'm just saying, we were supposed to have it, obviously got canceled. That's the logical next step. Depends when it is. My wife is due in,
For April?
my wife is
Yeah,
due
that's
in under
Drexel
5
Lodge,
weeks
that's
now, so
fine.
4.5 weeks. I don't know. I would like to, because I actually really like that place. I went there myself. I did a little bit of research. Yeah, I do. I do.
So we
Yeah.
can make quick decision on the next 3 in April. We're gonna do Drexel Lodge.
Yeah.
Do we have a date?
I was trying to get it for April Fool's Day, because then we could come up here and see Beth's show, but
The
that,
Friday, right?
yeah, it's a Friday, but the library closes at 2. So I don't know if there's any flexibility to extend those hours if it's, it's still light
Open on
and all,
Saturday.
but other than that, I didn't have. Beth, do you even have off a Sunday in April?
Right. So with my promotion at work, last I heard, my schedule is going to stay the same, which means I have Sunday, Mondays off. But the library's closed on Sunday, and
Yeah,
Monday, it's open later on Monday. So potentially could do something a Monday evening with the time changing this weekend, springing ahead. By the time we get to mid to late April, sunset isn't until like 7:30, 8
All right,
o'clock.
I don't think we have time to do these dates now.
April 4th is fine. Monday, April 4th is fine. And then we could do the walk from Drexel Lodge out to here. And then everybody Uber back.
Well, we're
after
gonna,
they-
we're gonna do a Monday that we've never done a weekday before. Are we worried
Right.
about, actually getting people to it? If we want to do it, we want to optimize, I would imagine, when,
And just because
Okay.
of the distance and it being probably more of an evening walk, may I suggest skipping Drexel Lodge, just starting from the township, walking the Nell Trail, or I don't even know what the official name of it's called, Nell Trail around, just doing a big loop. It'll be a simple walk,
Sure.
but kind of do that. That way nobody's having to worry about how they're getting back to Drexel Lodge in the dark, and
idea.
then saving Drexel Lodge for May
Okay.
as
Good
a
idea.
separate walk. And then June, we can do the Meadows or Goshen Trail.
And we could get EAC maybe to come and talk about their trees here. Because they're right there.
Yeah.
right? So that would be your nature thing on top of, okay, April 4th. And what do we call that? What do we call it? What is this walk like?
It's the Gable Park Trail,
Gable
right? Is
Park?
that what we call it?
The Bishop Hollow Trail.
Yeah.
Some people call it the Gable Trail.
Bishop Hollow Gable Park Trail. Okay, and library visit. And wait until we tell Arlene.
She'll be happy.
All right, so
Surprise!
that's Monday, April 4th. And then
Yeah.
we said, maybe we don't need to do the dates tonight, but for May, we're thinking Drexel Lodge, June, Goshen.
well, according to what Steve said, we do need to figure out today if we're going to do them, right?
Yeah,
Well, if you want me to
In the
put them in
newsletter.
if you want me to put them in the newsletter, I need to know what they are.
Yeah.
Avoid May 8th.
And I will say, I know I said I'm off on Sundays, that may be changing as the summer season comes on. So like,
Well, we can
don't
do-
schedule them necessarily around my schedule. Someone else can
Okay.
lead too. I'm happy to share that
Yeah.
responsibility, and I don't want to be the, I don't want to hog all of them.
Yeah.
If you identify the location versus identify the location, we can put that in newsletter
mhm.
with the idea that we can drive people.
That's what I was
Fine.
thinking, is we could
Okay.
get back to you with the date.
Fine, that's good.
For
And
June,
then
what-
you could
what
put like the month.
What
like,
about June
you know,
4?
That's
with,
Goshen and Meadows.
yeah,
Yeah,
And then
and that would be
July.
with the Historical Society.
yeah.
Good.
June
Okay.
4th, Goshen and Meadows. July, do you need July?
Yes.
Okay, July, I would do, it's a hot time of year.
I would separate the Goshen Trail and the Meadows Trail. You were saying Goshen and Meadows, so there's
Yeah,
the
they're not
Lister
the
Trail and the
same.
Meadows, and then you
Yeah.
have the Goshen Trail. I would keep
Right.
those as two separate walks.
Yeah, I
So
think it
like,
should be
Depends
Goshen
upon
Yeah.
the
because
size
there's a
of,
lot going on.
yeah, guys, wait a minute.
with the
Kathy is the
historical.
one who's hosting that in there, and she also has mentioned that depending upon the number of attendees, you got to split them up away from the Goshen Trail.
Mm.
Because you don't want, you're already going to have all these people on the premises at the historic building, and you don't want 100 more just hanging around on the Goshen Trail. You want to get them away towards the meadows. So I agree with you that these are two separate environments, but I would not truncate it to just one for that particular date. But it, you
I
know,
know what you're saying. I think it adds a layer of complexity to it. Because then, like you could potentially have one person leading a walk through the meadows. Now you're looking at having to have 2 leaders that day because you're going to take potentially 2 separate routes. So you're doubling up on the amount of people needed to run the walk. But I know what you're saying as far as like, you don't want to crowd out the Historical Society, but yeah, I mean,
so can we just give you guys the idea that we'll be back
Say that
with
for
you
July,
in
Amy.
a
Do
day
we
or two
officially
because
have
it
a
is late? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, I think we got the framework.
Okay. So July is what?
Not July
Just
4th.
second to the side.
Hmm,
the township is.
Hi, Amy.
The whole purpose is. With. all these
July
essential
4th is a
risks, so
Monday.
Even if it's something that, as long as we can talk about.
I'm wondering if you're not better off for your June event, not trying to do it on the same day as Historic Day. I think that if you're trying to use that same spot, you will either take away from Historic Day or you will take away from your walk because you're gonna have people that are there for Historic Day parking in the parking lot. And then you're going to want to add so many people. I just think it's something you need to consider. I understand trying to tie it and get people to do both. I just think that,
Oh, it's fine.
Can I
I just
make a
think that you might be overextending what we have as resources for parking there to make it work.
Can I make a recommendation for this? Why don't we not do a walk that day, but we simply have a small tent booth with the master plan? So we're not, all we're doing there is we're kind of piggybacking with the event to tell people about it, raise the master plan, kind of like what John did at what was the thing in the circle? What did we call
Gathering
it?
the circle.
Gathering in a circle. Very similar. It's already a township event. We're just part of the township. We don't have to do a walk every month. We can do an event of some kind, promotion of some kind, community engagement. Because the one thing that we have failed to do with this so far, which I don't think is a failure really, but should be a goal of these events, is to get people here. Everyone asks how they can be involved, and Leonard has said it a million times. I've said it a million times at these things. Come to our meetings, see what we're about, go on the website and see that, but we can't tell necessarily, like you said, Steve, what they're going to on the website. If they comment on the Facebook, it's good, but it would be nice to start eventually getting people coming to these meetings and township residents more. That's a good way of doing it. So that would be my recommendation. If everybody, I don't know, anyone has any.
I think that area around the John West House is going to be very crowded on colonial days. And I agree. I think it's going to be a problem.
Steve, what do you think
So
about that?
I like
Is that
your
less of
idea.
a problem?
I mean, that's fine. I mean, you could make it a week later and still do your walk. I'm not saying don't do your walk. I'm just saying, I don't know that I would try to do it on the same day that the Historic Society is doing their event. I think you're trying to then compete versus enhancing what's going on. And I would, I mean, I could be wrong, you know, it may work really well. I just, if you add 100 people for a walk and there's already 50, 60 people there, I'm sitting there going, I don't know where we put all the cars.
Well, can it be something this way? We've often, Terry, handed out their postcards, so is there, without having on there, be able to have something in the reverse, so that then we would have a poster even with a QR code. And that would promote our
I think
next
that
time. Yeah,
goes
just
along
like
with
you
what-
did. So we
what-
do it the reverse, so then we do it a week or so later.
Yeah, I think the next weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Go back with that.
So Steve, we'll have, hand out something, QR code, whatever, and then the walk will be the following weekend.
Yeah.
11th. Okay, so June 11th. We'll actually do the walk, but we'll have people present at the time of the 4th. Piggyback.
Okay.
And where's the walk going on June 11th?
I can't remember
is it
which ones,
Goshen or
I can't
Meadow?
remember which ones we set for the other ones. April is Drexel, or is that May? I forget. already.
April is the Bishop Hollow Gable Park
Thank you.
Trail. May is Drexel Lodge, June
Goshen,
Goshen Trail,
okay,
June 11th.
okay.
It makes sense too,
And then-
because in promoting, you just say you're coming back here next weekend.
In
for a walk.
July, can we say the Meadows for now?
Yeah. Yep,
And then we'll follow up with you for the date, or for the date, so that it can be put, as you said, you can say, push it to the website.
we've got all the dates now. So for July 4th is a Monday. Does anybody have any preference for July and get it done right now? No?
I'm looking at the
I would
calendar.
say for July, whatever date you pick, I wouldn't do the 4th of July just because there's already too much stuff going on. But
Yeah.
I would, especially if you're doing the Meadows, I would pick a day where you can do an evening walk just because of the heat. Or an early morning walk. Don't do a midday because there's not a lot of shade out there and it can get quite warm in July. So either like an 8 a.m. start or like a 6 p.m. start
On a Sunday night,
on whatever day
I think so.
you choose. to
Sunday
do.
evening,
I
or an
personally-
early Saturday morning?
I'm ignorant to this, but does anybody have any kids in sports that go through the summer?
Well,
Saturday
I'm not
morning?
here at all.
No.
On my daughter has tournaments every weekend.
So that's the full weekend, you're saying?
Yeah,
So
I
is
mean-
that another reason to do early evening Sunday kind of thing?
yes,
Temperatures cool
early evening
down,
Sunday could work, I
There's a
think.
chance you get people back
Back
in.
from weekends
Yeah.
away.
Okay,
That's what I was thinking. So-
okay, I'm fine with that.
Early evenings on Sundays, dinner time?
I would.
I'm
No.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do, I'm not,
I mean,
no.
if you did like 6 to 9 or something like that,
Saturday evening, you're saying?
I'm not gonna
Go out.
guide a night walk. I'm
well,
not,
the sun's
Yeah.
still gonna be
Okay.
out. The sunset isn't gonna be till like 9
She was
o'clock
just
at
saying, because in
night.
July it'll be so hot.
right.
It would be either evening or morning.
How about just get the dates?
Okay, so sun,
How about, at this point, you can think about it like a little bit, because I think we're,
Getting
doing
cranky.
that. I
Yeah.
think we have enough to at least put in to the newsletter that you're going to do a Meadows walk in July. And, maybe you'll decide to do it one evening after work,
okay.
as an option, even just to give something different.
Mhm.
I'm just throwing out there.
All right, so we owe you the date in July.
Yep, but for now, I'm just going to go ahead and put that you're going to have a walk in July to the Meadows.
Perfect,
Check our website for time and date.
great.
How's that?
was
And that
the
gives
date?
you some time to think about it. what
And
makes
you
sense.
have all the information you need for April, May, and June.
What was the May date again?
May. We don't have a date for May.
I was gonna say, but you're saying that.
All right, so we owe you a date for May too then?
Yep.
So all we have is June 11th right now.
And April 4th.
I have April 4th and June.
Oh, I'm
11th.
sorry, I was thinking about the newsletter ones.
April 4th,
Yeah, yeah.
June 11th.
Okay.
All right.
I wonder, before we
Thank you.
plow on, can we sort of take a look at the agenda? I know everybody's, time is somewhat limited. I know I can't stay unlimited, but of course, people can carry on without me as long as we have quorum. But just wondering, are there items, John, that should be absolutely covered today, and things that we might be able to cover
Well,
in
there's a
small
lot of
groups
them.
or?
Yeah, we have 20
And
minutes because we kind of made a commitment.
We have
that
to
it would be
do
over.
a
Yeah.
much better job of getting this thing moved on and not spend too much time. We've gone about 5% of what's on here, and it's nearly closing time.
Agree.
Official map.
That is the next. So let's go to 8.3, the official map. Just briefly, I spoke with Julie Del Muto, who's the manager of GIS for Delaware County Planning. I wanted to get a rough cost estimate for coming up with a map. She did that. She came up with less than $2,000. Question I have is this something that can be done in-house, or are we right to try to subcontract some of this out? That's the first question. The second question, can you find funds if we had to use Delaware County?
I think the first thing to do is to determine what you think the official map is before, I think that, in other words, before I would say that I would go out and get somebody to map everything, what we want, I would say, what are all the things that we anticipate being on the official map? And if we know what that is, then that may be the next step. But I think this is one piece of a bigger puzzle. So I know you're after putting where we want to put trails. Are you taking just the trails that we have on the map that we have already?
Yeah, I mean,
What is your goal? I'm not sure I
the
understand.
idea I would have is start with what we have already. And we may want to take some of those off or not use them quite to the degree that it might be on the map. But second, I think we need to go around and get ideas from people in the township of what other properties should go on. Because there's a lot of smaller parcels. The Heights might be one of them. The place across the street might be another, which, they don't stand out, but are really something that the township. And once we get that together, then we look and maybe cut some things that we might not want. But we should have something that everything is on, so we can get a pretty good idea of what's important. That was the.
And I think before I would engage the county to do the map, I would go through and decide what those things were. And then, because if I would see the purpose of using them is to create the image, not necessarily to create what we want done. We should come up with what we want first, and then I would go to them with what we have. So I think that if we did that, we had conversations with the board, what that looks like, then we could take that next step.
Okay, so the next step would maybe to make a presentation to the board.
Well, I think the first step is for this group to look at something that we think, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but, we think that these 6 areas ought to be on the official map. We think that these 20 trails ought to be on the official map. That's the first step. And you all come back and say, as a group, you have to say, this is what we think an official map ought to be. And then that would then go to the board as an option of saying, here's our advice as the Trails and Greenways. This is what we think ought to be as our official map.
Okay, I think the first step might be to try to get an idea of what other people might want to have on here.
Well, then if that's the case, and you're going to go outside of this group, then I think the first step is to go to the board and say, one of the things that we want to do is create an official map. Is the board in agreement with that? And if so, then the next step would be then to go and do that. But before you take that step, I think you need to make sure the board's in agreement with taking a step to do an official map.
Okay.
Can I ask a question regarding this? Is that I was under the impression, and I may be completely wrong, that like you said, the master plan that we already have for the trails and greenways, it's not just trails, there's green spaces identified
Yes.
by Gilmore Associates on those maps. I was under the impression that those are already identified on that map, the trails, the green spaces, and it simply goes on to there. And then once we have that, in a format such as the draft that, I don't know, Delaware County would do essentially, then we propose that to the board as the actual deliverable for them to agree or disagree on and make deliberations. Am I
I'm
correct in
saying
that?
if you want to go out to the public and get additional information, you need to go back before the board and say, we're wanting to do this because the board's already agreed to what's on the Greenways piece. If you're changing that or amending that in any way, then I think you have to go back to the board and ask and say that we want to see if there's any other areas that we want to add. We want to just, if that's what you're wanting to do, I think you need to step back and I think you need to go before the board before you do so.
What would happen if we limited our queries just to people that are working for the township? I mean, that might be all we need rather than going out to the public. Just go around to the various committees. And do you have any ideas that
I think if you're going to change what was given to the board and adopted by the board as being the trails and greenways that we have all approved, or, that they approved in this document, if you're going to change this, I think you need to go back to the board and say, we're looking at an official map. We think we need to adjust some of the things that are on here by going through and looking at these, talking to these other committees. Are you okay with that? Because the board has passed this.
Okay.
The board has set this as your guideline. If you're going to change that, I think you need to ask the board before you, I think it would be, I think before you went out to, I'm assuming you're talking about going to EAC, the parks and those kind of things. When you say staff, you're not talking about George and I, based on what you said. So I think that if you're going to do that, I would get permission. I would at least give a presentation why you think you want to do that to the board, but it should come from here as a group that you want to do that, and then go forward.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. 8.4, discussion and potential action on signage and access to Newtown Meadow Preserve. Beth, is there anything that you would like to talk about?
Last time we met, you guys were talking about possibly redoing some of the graphic identity for the township. So I've been kind of waiting to see what you guys have to say about that. So I toss it to you guys.
Yeah, I think that we're still talking through exactly what that's going to look like and how we're going to do that step. George and I did talk. We think that if there are some things that you think are vital to get out now, that we could do some signage. What did you say, George? Was it like plastic signage or what? I forgot what you said. There's some signage we could invest in that would look nice now, but not necessarily be permanent signage that we would put in some locations to get some things out. We have some money that could be spent in that direction. Because I think it's going to take us probably 6 to 8 months to go through that process, maybe. And so instead of losing the whole summer, George suggested, which I thought was a great idea, was if you had some ideas that you would like to get out, like if there's some places on the Meadow Preserve or some places that you want to do some basic signage, that we would do it, and we would do it, with some nice,
Like H-frame or something like that,
huh?
like H-frame signs or like yard signs or something.
Well, I
along those
actually,
lines.
Even a little better quality than that. We could just get something that, I think the long-term plan is to have really nice permanent signage. And I think that there's something probably in between a lawn sign and that really nice permanent signage that we want that people walk in and say, that's Newtown. And it's consistent with all of the trails and all the parks. And I think the idea is we want to get something out there now. And it's, you know, it's not going to be what it's going to be the permanent version. It'll be a step.
Okay.
And I think another reason for the timing, getting it out now, we had that no trespassing sign in the grass and it disappeared. I was thinking, great, they've finally come to their senses. But now there's a big permanent no trespassing sign on the paved area, the area that has the stone facade. And it's right next to that access road, says no trespassing.
That sign's been there.
Is it?
Yep.
Yeah. it has.
Okay, but we have to get the sign out there that makes people.
The
think
part
that they
of
can
the
go down.
problem is, I mean, we can do that. I until we have places for people to actually go when they go down there in regards to right now, people drive down there and
Yeah,
they park
yeah.
and I'm okay with it.
Okay.
But we don't, I mean, if we had 10 cars down there, we couldn't handle 10
No,
cars.
I appreciate that. That brings me to the next section. And I had sent an email out to see if we couldn't get a work detail to clear out the parking area. I did get a response from Leonard suggesting meeting with both of you, Steve Neese and George Sharitz, maybe Joe Catania and Eileen Nelson, to see the best way forward. Does that sound like a?
Yeah, I think that if that's what this, I think the committee as a whole needs to give direction as to what you want us to do. And if that is a committee decision and you all vote on it and
Okay.
take action on it, then we'll work and do that. And, or at least as an acclamation that that's what you want.
Okay.
I think that's what Leonard was trying to get at. As we go through these processes, you know, we'll do a lot of things, but we want to see action from, right now, there's 6 of you sitting here, but the 6 of you sitting here saying, this is what we think is the most important things and the things that we should be focusing on. We'll focus on whatever you guys give us direction on. And for example, that particular thing, we could have a conversation on, but I would argue before we ever cut the first piece, that it's also going to have to go back before the board because, you know, again, your role is advisory. You're saying that we think that the parking spots at the Meadow Preserve should be a priority. And if that's what you're saying, that's great. We'll take it back to the board, make sure the board agrees, we'll take those steps. That probably needs to happen first before we even have the conversation of whether volunteers can clear this spot.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
so that would be how I would recommend the
All
steps.
right.
Procedurally, how does that look? I'm trying to learn, like, at this level, what do we do? Do we literally just say, okay, items for next agenda, we want to put that for a vote, we want to discuss it, and we just want to vote on it?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
preferably, obviously, have more of our people here, but as long as we have a quorum, we can still vote on it, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
there any, because I've read Leonard's history of the whole property and I know it's not all, but is there merit in having us waiting?
Well,
I mean, I support it in principle, and that said, I don't know what the.
look, what I will tell you is you've had an additional 50 or 60 residents move into Lissitor who are now close to where the trail is and real much closer to where the Meadow Preserve is. And there are some that can't wait until we get it all developed and it's walkable and they're ready to use it every day. There's other ones, to be quite frank, would rather we never develop it and never have anybody walk there. Episcopal Academy has been very concerned about the access road being used by multiple people. They're concerned about the safety. They're concerned about the people pulling in and out, and particularly the traffic that comes up from, if you know that area, you know the circle where it comes up and that traffic comes up that way. When people are coming up that, they're accelerating, trying to get up to speed. At the same time, somebody might be coming out of there and they're just worried about somebody getting hit. In addition, the Episcopal Academy is concerned about the safety of their students. I've had this conversation. I actually believe the more the trail is used, the safer it is for everybody who uses the trail and anybody who's near the trail. More eyes means more people to be watching it. To me, it's probably more dangerous to have less people out there than more people out there. That's my personal opinion. And we've seen that play out, though, when in other areas where trails have been. Episcopal Academy is concerned about people leaving the trail and going on to Episcopal Academy property, particularly when no one else is there, or when the students are there. And so George's team has gone out, although I think we decided some of the signs need to be replaced because the squirrels thought they were dessert or something. But we've put down, fencing every, roughly 50 feet to try to give the sense of, yes, there is a divide between us and them, and kind of where is that property line, because not everybody knows that. And, George's team, I think, has done a great job of trying to differentiate that in different places where it matters. If we're going to take a step, two of the things that I would do once the board is agreed that that's the step we're going to take, is that I would want to make sure that I'm having conversations with the HOA at Lissitor. I'm not asking permission. That's not the goal. The goal is to make sure we're communicating and listening and hearing, if there is a concern, can we address the concern? The same thing with Episcopal. Look, we are here as town neighbors, it's the same thing I would do if I was going to paint my house pink. I'm not going to, but if I was going to paint my house pink, I would talk to my neighbors and say, this is what I'm wanting to do, because I realize it's a little edgy, and if you're all okay, I'll do it. If you're not okay, I might still do it, but I want to hear what you have to say, because I have the right to do that, right? And so we have the right to use the access road. We have the right to put parking in that location. How we do that becomes important. And so I'm going to focus on the how, to make sure that we are the best neighbors possible, that people at least feel like they were heard and listened to. Episcopal Academies feels like they're heard and listened to through the process.
I'll just add, I thank you for that explanation, and I absolutely favor it. I mean, I would think and wonder, referencing the Goshen Trail, for instance, I use both the meadows, and I mean, I live Newtown Walk, so I use all of these regularly. Goshen Road is a horror in terms of speeding and all, yet I haven't seen any accidents yet at, where people park for the Goshen Trail. I walk there, etc. So it seems like we already have examples where there are small parking lots. And are there any more accidents than usual? I would probably say no, no. I mean, we have crazy drivers, and that's putting in a parking lot is not going to stop, unfortunately. But so thank you for that explanation. And it certainly helps me, because I want to just say yes, and we're not voting today, but I always ask myself, do I understand the other perspective?
One thing I will say, if we put 10 parking places in down at the location that we're looking at, and I'm saying 10, I think that's, I know some have said 20. I'm looking at the spot without having to go in and do major fill and those kind of things. I think we can do 10. The other thing that we're going to have to look at if we do that is there is the access road. The access road is a 1-lane road. And so we will have to consider doing some pull-offs to take that into account. And if we're doing that, depending on what we do with these pull-offs, we may also have to do some stormwater management as part of that. And so just so it may not be just so simple as to go clear 10 spaces and say, go park. We may have to take some steps with what we're doing. And even depending on how we do the parking, we may have to do some stormwater basic management, erosion management in that. So George and I have talked. There are some area there, that whole area back there, I would like to get in and really, we're talking about maybe getting a sickle or something, that we could take and clear out and lower a fair amount of that. That's just thicket, that there's no real benefit to the meadow. It's thorny too. And if we could clean that up a little bit and go through that would be benefit. We're kind of talking about what that would look like. But before we even do that, I just want to make sure I have the conversations with you and the board as to taking those steps, as well as Park and Recreation. They're because they ultimately manage the park. We have to cover a lot of bases. We can't just go do. And that's one of the challenges.
And one of the things I wanted to add, John asked me to chair the creation of the trail in between the meadow through Echo Valley to Goshen. And Steve, I emailed with you, the first thing I wanted to do was find out what is the other side of the story? What are the objections and what's the history and the background on this initiative? So just to keep this really short and sweet, I came up with like questions to ask. First of all, have we as a committee identified, voted on, approved, and prioritized this trail to move forward on? That's like the first step. And then the next step is putting together like a pre-plan for the Board of Supervisors to say, based on the master plan and the resolution set forth for this committee, this is how we want to move forward with the Meadow Trail, because what I'm doing is affected by whether or not we have parking. We can't do that extension if people don't have somewhere to park first over there. And then I just put together a bunch of other questions. What is the goal? What is the goal? Is it, to connect that trail to the Goshen Trail? Do we have a trail map or any drawings? What are the touch points, connections, parking requirements, stormwater? Do we have pictures? Is a feasibility study required? Do we need engineers? Are we going to fundraise? Yes or no? Can grants be applied to this? And then that would create, once we prioritize and approve a trail or an initiative or an event on this committee, then we have a process in place. We have a trail prep plan. This is what we're going to do. We take it to the Board of Supervisors, they okay it, and then we can move forward with working with the township to actually execute on this. But I think we need a process in place for a trail or an event initiative prep plan first from this committee to approve it, to take it to the Board of Supervisors, make sure they're on board. Then we go into the next steps of my checklist are businesses or HOAs affected? And if so, who are the stakeholders? What's the history? Has the township had conversations with them already? Who are the decision makers on the property? Are any companies involved to date? If so, who have we interacted with from a township level with this company? What were the results of prior discussions? Do we have a negotiation mediation plan in place to talk to these companies, businesses, HOAs early and make them feel part of the process? And then the last piece is, our township's residents affected? And the same kind of checklist we would put in place. If so, are there easements that are going to be required? Have we contacted residents to get their input yet? If not, what are the questions we would want to ask them? Get the neighborhood and the neighbors involved early. And then get into signage and all that kind of stuff that comes later. I just think we need like a pre-plan from this committee to get approved by the board. And then we can start executing and putting together a socialization plan for the neighbors or any residents or companies or HOAs that are touch points for doing the initiatives. But I think for us, we need like a real process. So in addition to kind of some of the other notes I'm going to put in the minutes, I'm going to put my checklist in as well, and we can kind of vote on that and tweak it at the next meeting.
And can I make a motion that we gotta get, we're well beyond time, but
Yep.
to make a motion, we put that in the next agenda. And from now on, we start thinking about our individual meetings and maybe we should focus on one of our goals each meeting. It sucks from the perspective of, we all have the individual things that we find most interesting, but maybe we need to just pick one per monthly meeting. And that way we can put in all the ideas, all the tech, we can actually write it down, do it in that meeting. That way, we're actually feeling like we're getting something done, and being a little bit more organized, because we have so much that we're going over. And I know that it's been difficult, John. We've had the problem too, where it's hard to even get our little subcommittees together to actually get work done, to then present back in this meeting. It's been too difficult. I think we need to change how we're doing things.
I've developed agendas. I know.
No, the challenge that you just have is, if you, are you going to stop talking about it because you're not going to act on it? Or if it's something you feel like you need to act on, do you give yourselves permission to go beyond the time? If that one of the challenges we have with a public meeting, which you're and individuals in this process, is that, because we're doing it kind of democratically, you have to give a period of time to allow people to express their opinion. And so, but it's okay to say, particularly if you're not going to take an action on something, like an update, we're going to talk about it for 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and that's it. And, because we could spend a lot of time talking about something on an update that you don't want to do that.
All right, so yeah, I make a motion to put into the agenda for next meeting that we talk about your checklist. We talk about this plan specifically. We've gone over the Meadow plan and the trip and how that's going to all work out. Let's make that the focus of our next meeting, is my personal.
When you're saying the Meadow plan, are we talking about like the parking lot and all of
Parking
that?
lot, yes, I'm sorry. The parking lot and the signage, because it pertains to that plan and the checklist specifically. Just going to put the checklist in for us to have, so that when we come in the next meeting, that is part of the agenda and that is the focus of it.
Okay, so the idea would be that if we do this for the next meeting on the Meadow Preserve Trail, then we would vote on actionable items, taking action on that.
Yep.
I might be assigned to go with John to meet with you and George, and we talk about whatever progress we've made on this checklist. But then the next meeting might be on something else where other people are tasked to go do other things. I just want to make sure that, like, for example, what Terry's doing has been so great with getting promotion of this committee and people coming to do walks. She's still doing that. I might be working on Meadow. You might be working on Drexel Lodge. I do think what we started with the org structure, what John put in place, I think with assigning people to certain trails is a nice strategy. Are we thinking of not doing that?
No, I mean, I think, yeah, that totally makes sense. The issue is just, we had a lot of disagreement on the level of organization that we wanted.
Yeah.
And we're just seeing if that's difficult then in practice, because we're all over the place and we're having trouble meeting our time, where there's
Yeah.
too many things to talk about. That's all. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So why not, then I would.
If this doesn't work, we can always change it again in the future too. If we find that if we're only focusing on one topic in each meeting and we find that we're not making enough progress, there's nothing saying we can't go back and change it again. We're learning, we're new. And like people like me, I have zero experience in public, government and all this. And I'm trying to learn just the logistics. I had no idea that we could accept fundraising. No idea. So stuff like that comes out. But yeah, we can try it and we can see. I don't know if anybody has a disagreement, but.
Well, I think if you concentrate on just one and that doesn't get to the point where you want it, you don't have anything else.
Just remember, if it's not on your agenda, you can't take action on it. So if there's something you want on the agenda to keep something else moving, you just want to make sure it's on there. I think John's making, I think that's the point that John's making is, if you come back and say, we're only going to talk about these two things, and we just put those on the agenda, and then you want to talk about something else because you had extra time, then you wouldn't be able to do it because it's not on the agenda.
You're going to what you wanted and maybe, you know, that big ticket item, you put in down for 45 minutes. And the
Yeah.
smaller things, you just put, 5-minute, 10-minute check.
Yep.
And then
Be that. Yeah, because if there's nothing. Progress.
Yeah.
On the list, and that there's something new or some cause for concern.
Yeah, there are a lot of items that might not have any action for a couple of months.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and so
But-
it won't fall off.
You have an opportunity for something to go, and we need to be in a position to move on.
Yep. So the updates will include the walks and any other agenda items that we want to continue to have updates on, things that might progress in 2 to 3 months, whatever it is. But the bulk of the time, and we will put times on the agenda, will be for the actionable items. And for next month, it'll be the parking, the signage, the checklist for the Meadow Preserve.
So that it helps us.
Yeah.
Like having given-
I can't work without it. I have to have a process that we can, that'll be repeatable for every trail, every event, every
I would think
initiative
that
we
on the
do.
agenda would be,
Yeah,
and knowing that.
exactly. And I can send this out to everybody for feedback, or is that?
You can send it out. Just make sure that when you do, the best way to do it is to send it out in blind copy,
Okay,
everybody who you're sending it to, so that you
Okay.
don't end up
Okay.
with the communication going on.
got it.
But if you send it out, just be careful that you don't respond all when
Okay,
you respond back, if you're going to respond back.
but they can give me feedback on the checklist and then I can edit.
I
the
would
checklist.
argue you can't really edit it.
Okay,
Okay, because then you're deliberating and you're making decisions as a
Okay.
group. What I would say is that you come back, you have all of the.
they bring their questions to the next meeting.
Well, but you could have them all
Okay,
and you could say, here's all the things that were
Got
brought
it.
back to us. Here's how we want to, here's how, like, you could control the conversation by saying, these are the 5 things I got back.
Yeah.
If you understand what I'm
great,
saying.
perfect. Okay, I'll do that in advance of our next meeting.
I would make recommendation. Blind copy Steve, or
Okay.
copy Steve in as well, just
Yep.
so that if there's something we need to do from the township side, we have that information.
Great.
Okay, it is 10 minutes after 8.
Yep.
How much later do folks want to stay?
The guys have been here all day. George, I know you guys have been here.
I think we need to put off 9.2.
We've already
Nine-
talked about Garrett Williams and
Yeah,
9.2,
9.2,
you guys had the
9.4.
rail trail subcommittee here before.
They met, we're finalizing the RFP and it's going to go out.
There you go. There's our update there. Trail Summit we had on February 12th. I thought we already talked about that, but Leonard and I spoke. It was extremely educational for all of us. I mean, I love seeing some of what the other townships have done, the different groups and. Yep. Yep, and we've already made some connections, and that's the reason why Terry, well, I forget her name, Elaine Schaefer came this past Sunday was because of that connections and Leonard talking with them through that trail summit. So message received, and that was a good actionable thing that came from it. So then, and then what's the last one? Reese's.
Okay, now wait a minute. Let me just bring up a couple of things. You're getting a little bit ahead of the things. 9.4, we're talking about the Reese's Run Greenway Trail. We're talking about the trail from Boot Road to Route 3. I just need to report a little bit. The Board of Supervisors approved or going ahead with that. I did have a meeting with Paul DeBaton. We had, you know, interesting meeting. what we're planning for is a more formal meeting in about a month's time with you involved, you folks, and really getting down to business. We have to get a lot of stuff out of the way first, but I think we're on a path to do something. Stony Knoll, we already talked about. We're going to move ahead on that. Additional business. We talked about the art show. We talked about the temporary listener mail, Meadow Trail, Aaron. Lisa, this is 10 point, this is another item. Lisa Borowski, who's a Radnor Township Commissioner, she's involved with trails over there. I had a talk with her at Garrett Williamson. She would like to get together. I suggested maybe Amy could be part of that group to talk about where potential connections. Is that okay for us to do and see what?
I'm lost.
Okay,
I only have a 10.1.
Yeah,
So
I
that's what.
know. This is all about additional business. This is number 10.
Yeah,
and This
yeah,
is some
but if we-
additional business. that
It's
came
not on the
in.
Okay, so it's not on the agenda.
Okay, I can talk about it.
Yeah, you can talk about it.
That's what I'm
I
doing.
just was lost. I'm not sure. I was trying to
Okay.
follow what you were saying and
Okay,
I'm trying to take notes over here and
all
I got
right,
lost.
yeah. A lot of things came over the gunnels at the last minute.
Okay.
But I think we have a plan just to see what they have in mind and report back to the committee and the board. Borowsky. I don't know.
Yeah. Is the Radnor.
Okay. All right,
She's a commissioner.
yes.
It wouldn't be till 2 years from now. I think. Oh, different thing. So I think she's running for state rep. Not, so a way I always think about it, I don't want to take much of your time, but for purposes, local reps are always elected on the odd years and start the even years. State reps are elected on the even years and federal reps are elected on the even years and start on the odd years. So if you think about your presidential elections are always on the 20s, like, it was 20 and then 24, 28, right? And then that's when you have but local elections are always done and on the odd year and then start on the even year. So that's how I always keep track. I know it sounds crazy, but that's how I keep track of it here in Pennsylvania.
Okay, one other thing, I just found out about it today. There is a Trails Day set aside by the Rails to Trails Conservancy. It's April 23rd. I think we ought to be thinking something we might want to do on that particular day. I don't think we have time to discuss it now. Saturday.
So could we do our walk on that day?
I can't do a Saturday.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, so we'll just take note of the possibility of a Rails to Trails Day.
Just Trails Day. And apparently it's fairly popular throughout. So it might-
Doing like a Facebook post about like Rails to Trails, if they're sponsoring something, be like, hey, did you know the township is working on a Rails to Trails project? Right now we have this feasibility. going on, like, we do just kind of informational kind of, we'll bring your attention to this, but not necessarily like voting an event or something.
Absolutely.
stuff.
I mean, yes. We would just review it before it goes out. And some of things we're wanting to make sure we have the public really notified well on, so that they understand. So we might look at the wording just a little bit just to make sure. Because this one here, this particular issue, the rail trail, there's a lot of people that are really against it.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure that we communicate that it's a public process.
Right.
They're going to be heard.
You could
you
use
know.
it as a call to action for,
Yeah.
like, hey, you have an opinion, come,
Yes,
to this
exactly.
X, Y, or Z and use it to promote
Yep.
feasibility. that
Yep.
is going on.
I don't have a problem with that at all. Yeah, I would, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I would love for this group to look at, I want to make sure we're doing about 3 posts a week from our Facebook page, at least 3 posts a week, so it stays relevant. Not all 3 would come from this group, but you might be 4 posts a month. So, I mean, I'm more than happy to look at that. Okay. Yes, I mean, like, yeah, yeah. Yep,
All right, it is.
he did do a good
8:20.
job with those.
Okay. Any more board comment? Any public comment?
Oh, I did have that email. I'm sorry, I got to go back. So, oops, let me go back to it. So this was directed to you all, and I will email it to you. We got it today. And so there is a husband and wife that live at 4018 Goshen Road. I believe it kind of butts where our Goshen Trail is. They expressed some concern about safety of cars speeding and losing control along Goshen and what that would mean on the trail. But I think probably the bigger issue or 2 issues that came out of it, and I don't know that they're bigger, but something that we can probably take a look at. They've walked and they've found some issues along the fence line. George has, pointed out, and I knew this as well, that the fence does not belong to the township along Goshen Road. That fence actually belongs to SAP and to BPG, kind of depending on where it is along that section. But there also is quite a bit of trash that's accumulating along the trail, and they asked if they could, participate in some ways and maybe in doing cleanup and things like that, or being part of that. So I'll send this out to you so you can see it, what they're talking about. It is probably something that at some point we want to talk about. Do we want to have, like a volunteer day? Maybe when we're not doing a walk on another time that, people would come out and do a trail cleanup and tackle certain ones of our trails. I know our public works team aims at trying to keep it clean, but they can't do everything. And so, and particularly as we add more trails, this is going to become more important. So, but that's what that email was. I'll send it out to everyone, let you see it, and we'll also get it so it's attached to the agenda, so that what the public comment was.
Would we want to do the June 11th Goshen Trail as a cleanup? No? Okay. They should feel free to pick up the trash whenever they want to.
Oh, yeah.
As brand new neighbors, I mean, absolutely.
No, I mean, we do that. We do that.
Well-
Yeah.
We say, oh,
Anyone can, at any time.
Well-
Mhm.
When we have,
Very careful.
when we have our walks from the future, and we do our talks, I'm just gonna recommend from now on, like, hey, if you guys are people that like to use trails, like to walk, do what I do. You carry a Wawa bag, Gennardi's bag, giant bag, whatever with you. I carry rubber gloves even on my hikes, just because it irritates me to see it. So just trying to get the average walker, hiker, trail user conscious of their part of it, so we don't have to rely on the big volunteer days.
I think Goshen Trail is one of those more difficult ones in that I think probably, I would guess, most of that trash has nothing to do with our walkers.
It's debris from
It's,
cars.
it's debris from cars
Yeah.
coming off.
Trash trucks
Trash,
right
yeah,
there.
yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's, I know George's team spends a lot more time cleaning that trail than we do some of the others because of that. Yeah. So,
Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
Motion.
Yay.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.